When it comes to innovation, the turn-based RPG genre is probably the one in most dire need of it. WOLFSTRIDE certainly brings some new fresh air into the genre, and it comes wrapped around a very interesting, bold and stylish look. But is it enough to recommend this unusual title to RPG veterans and newcomers? Let's take a look. This is Reviews from the Void. WOLFSTRIDE looks phenomenal. The black and white approach is certainly striking, and the character portraits and mechas are impressive, with a very distinctive comic book art style to them. Yes, WOLFSTRIDE is all about mecha battles. The combats will always be 1v1 huge 80 feet tall robots duking it out, and it's pretty awesome. This game divides the main character role to two people, well, kinda. The actual protagonist is Shade, as the story revolves around him and his past as a criminal, which is real interesting by the way, and he's the one you control as you walk around and do all the talking and exploration, but he's not the one doing the actual fights. Shade is rather the manager of the mecha battle team, while the actual mecha pilot is Knife Leopard, and the battle system here is certainly another highlight, very unique and simple in nature while also providing a lot of room for strategy as the game introduces all the mechanisms one by one. But there are a few glaring drawbacks to this game. This is yet another RPG that falls into the trap of taking a real long time to get things going. Seriously, the first 2 hours are nothing but talk and predetermined battles. Even though the story is very interesting and the voiceover is excellent, having no action for 2 hours is a lot to endure. It kills the excellent mood that the daring presentation sets up in the first 10 minutes. But after the initial couple of hours, things get streamlined and you get a nice frequency of battles finally. And then the gameplay becomes way more interesting, as your team advances on the ranks to becoming mecha champions. There are a few other problems to this game, but we'll get to them as we go into detail while we score this bad boy. Graphics and sound. The art style in WOLFSTRIDE fits the tone of the game perfectly, with real high quality comic book style pictures that are a delight to see. Every time a new character is introduced, I stopped a little to marvel at their design. The animations for the mechas during the battles are striking, with a very bold close-up camera position that increases the cinematic nature of huge robots bumping heads. However, during the walking around parts in the game, it switches to a 16-bit pixel art that has its charm, no doubt, but at first can feel a bit out of place. The music and sound effects are solid, while the voiceover is excellent, really excellent. AAA quality, no exaggeration, except for one character. Peepoo. Yes, that's his name. And oh my god, this stupid robot is the worst. The voiceover doesn't sound robotic at all. Instead, it's a really irritating, high-pitched voice. The robot has a foul mouth, but at the same time, it's programmed to censor itself. So instead of saying the curse words, it will say P all the time, constantly. It is just beyond annoying. I don't blame it on the voice actor actually. He delivers the lines well, but the direction they took for this character is just irritating instead of funny, most of the time at least. Of course, there is a simple solution to this, just press the button to skip his voice lines, but that's not ideal, right? If it weren't for that, I would debate on giving this game a 1.8 or more on graphics and sound, but because of Peepoo, it gets a 1.4, and that's maybe even too generous. Gameplay and challenge. Now on this category, WOLFSTRIDE knocks it out of the park. It plays very well, especially inside the battles, and without ever getting too complicated at all, which is good news even for newcomers to RPGs. Let me illustrate one encounter here for you. You see this line of squares down here in the bottom? That represents the physical position of the two giant robots. You can move your robot back and forth freely. Each square will cost you 1 move point. Also, each square may or may not have a bonus or a reduction to the damage caused by whoever is on it. So positioning is very important in this game. During your turn, you can move or attack in whichever order you want, and you can go back and forth between moving and attacking however many times you desire, as long as you still have move points and AP to use on abilities. Now, the attack abilities have widely different effects and range, which is another aspect that affects positioning strategies. You can, for instance, fire a gun or use a flamethrower at a distance, or you can use a mid-range attack that skips the square right in front of you, or even get real close for a melee attack that will usually accompany a knockback effect. So the opponents can also cause each other to move in several different ways. You have defensive skills as well that also spend AP, and those are made essential as you'll most likely need to reload your gun for the ranged attacks, and that's done with a defensive skill. You can of course raise your defenses and even taunt the enemy into attacking a specific part of your mecha. Oh yeah, there is that too. Each mecha has 4 body parts to be targeted: the head, the body, and each arm. You lose the match only if your body is destroyed, but if they destroy your head, for instance, you can't aim your attacks anymore. They will hit enemy parts at random. If they kill your left arm, most of your attacks will become unusable, and that's where the repair skills come in. Each round you'll fill up your nanofluid meter, and once it's full you can use your repair skills to either replenish the health of a part or bring it back from destroyed. These repair moves can also bring bonuses like replenishing some of your AP or MP, so it's important to know when to use them. So as you can see, there is a lot of room for strategy here, especially since all those things I talked about are modifiable before battle. You not only equip gear to your mecha that improves his health, AP and MP, but you also equip abilities to your pilot. If I have not made this apparent enough, the battle system in WOLFSTRIDE is awesome. And there's more to it, like stances that act like passive skills and gadgets that can also improve your performance. It may seem like a lot to take in, because I talked about 10 different things in 1 minute, but the game introduces them one by one and explains them really well, so it's all perfectly manageable. Other than the battle system, we also have several minigames that are very simple but function pretty well. So in terms of gameplay, it's all good in WOLFSTRIDE. Meanwhile, the challenge is great. The fights are difficult until you start getting the system of combat, then you find your style, and it gets much easier until around the midpoint of the game, when the opponents start getting tougher and demanding on the strategy side, which feels great actually. So in terms of gameplay and challenge, I don't have any big concerns. There are even incredibly difficult optional opponents in the virtual battles that are some of the best fights in the game. So as I could not find a single problem in this category, WOLFSTRIDE scores a 2 out of 2 in gameplay and challenge. Bang for buck. As of the making of this review, this game goes for $14.99 undiscounted on Epic and Steam. WOLFSTRIDE is a rather long game, lasting several dozens of hours, including the optional stuff. However, this category is not just about how many hours are there versus how much it costs. Much more important than the sheer amount of hours is how much enjoyment is there to be had. Now, even though the battles, which are the main gameplay aspect, as well as its orbiting features such as the pre-battle preparations and the talking to NPCs are all great, there are some other sides of this game that lag behind. For instance, there are lots of fetch quests and going back and forth between locations. Now, don't get me wrong, many of these bring fantastic character development that I enjoyed a lot, but the actual going back and forth is a nuisance. And it's mostly because when you click on a location to visit it, you're not dropped on the location itself, but rather on the streets that lead to it one screen behind. So you'll you'll have to run across these segments every single time you visit a location, and this sucks. Even though they give reason for these screens to exist, most times you just want to go straight to the junkyard or the bar or whatever, and not have to pass through the streets. This feels like a small waste of time in every single occasion, and it piles on. Another problem is that the game requires you to make some cash in between matches, and you do that by playing a whole bunch of minigames. These are kinda cool actually, as they can be rather amusing. You'll be delivering things riding a bike while avoiding obstacles, you'll be bathing cats, making omelets to sell, digging for treasure, and even managing an arcade. It's all pretty cool. However, they incentivize you to grind these minigames in order to make enough cash to afford the better gear and moves. And that's when most people will find the minigames becoming a drag. It's not a huge issue, as these two problems I talked about are side aspects of the game, but it's still not ideal. So in bang for buck, WOLFSTRIDE still gets a positive score, just not among the highest, 1.4 out of 2. The sauce. The sauce is the main aspect of any game. It's that special thing that binds all other aspects together and gives it a particular taste, resulting in much more than the simple sum of their parts, for better or worse. Now, this game goes heavy on sauce material. It has loads of personality and in an overwhelmingly positive way for sure. The way the music, sound effects, and especially the voiceover integrate with the art style and tone of this game is an accomplishment. This is no easy feat in any game, and WOLFSTRIDE does it splendidly. Every single time a ranked match begins, you feel that rush of adrenaline, like your life depends on it, and the immersion factor goes through the roof. However, in between matches, most people will find the game to drag, mostly because of a lot of repetition in the side activities. The map is too small for the amount of story and character development this game has, which leads you to visit the same few locations dozens of times. The variety in the minigames helps, but only to a certain limit, because you will most likely elect the one you can do better at to grind over and over until you get all the cash you need, because that way you waste less time. Also, there is an optional feature in WOLFSTRIDE that I haven't explained yet called virtual battles, where you fight against randomized opponents without exposing your mecha to real damage. Now, there is one good thing about it. This is where the toughest opponents in the game are, and those battles are awesome and a welcome optional feature, but this is more for the late game part. The main purpose of this mode are the randomized battles that will grant you experience points to level up in this virtual mode, and with each level you get a reward, with some of them being very helpful to the story matches. However, this is another grinding aspect of the game, and far worse than the minigame one. I swear, I only saw like 5 different opponents after playing it for several dozens of times until I couldn't take it anymore. And this is so weird because the game didn't need this. In the actual story, you don't have levels, so WOLFSTRIDE could have avoided grinding battles completely, which most people, RPG fans included, would have appreciated. To me, this was the worst aspect of the game, but I have to emphasize again that all these problems lie in the side or optional features of the game. As soon as you approach the day of a story match, the enjoyment ramps up real high. Preparing for the battles is a blast, as there are so many things to consider and yet it never feels overwhelming. And after the 2 initial hours, the game evolves in a perfect pace, and so does the story. WOLFSTRIDE has a noteworthy, well-written narrative, full of grown-up stuff like death, gambling addiction, crimes, and much more. And this was surprising, as it kinda goes in contrast with all the edginess of the characters. Not only do we get tough and awesome characters both in look and personality, but through the story and character development they end up not being shallow at all, having interesting and creative backstories. Even a few of the opponents have some exposition like that. Before one of the fights I found the opponent's sisters talking about the upcoming match in the bar, so that character became that much more interesting. That's attention to detail and it's much appreciated. So yeah, this category was the toughest to score. On one hand, we have glaring problems with the permeating aspects of the game, and on the other, the main stuff here is incredibly positive. So it ended up getting a 3.3 out of 4, which is very positive but still noticeably away from perfect. So So there we have it. WOLFSTRIDE gets a final score of 8.1 out of 10. If you're looking for a very different RPG that manages to be entertaining while still nailing the most important gameplay aspects such as battle, strategy, as well as a great story and characters, which are very important in any RPG, WOLFSTRIDE is certainly a great option. Congrats to Otaimon, developer team from Brazil, for this. By the way, Otaimon is also the name of the founder of this studio, and he is colorblind, so that's the major reason why the game is in black and white. And that's it for the review. If you enjoyed, put some sauce in that like and subscribe button so the channel can grow. In any case, I hope this was helpful or entertaining to you. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon.